Control Alt Delete is my group program that I host quarterly, and it's a 12-week program on healing the gut-brain connection. So this is under the umbrella of Control Alt Delete, today's workshop. So this is going to be the flow of today's chat. We're going to start with some land acknowledgement and introductions, the practices and lessons of the how and why to heal a gut-brain connection, and just a summary, a little bit of mindset going forward after today's talk in our endeavors and our journey of healing the gut-brain connection, a mindset that can be found helpful, and a summary of our work today. So to begin, I just wanted to spend some time giving some land acknowledgement. Toronto is located on the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples dating back countless generations. I want to show my respect for the contributions and recognize the role of treaty making in what is now Ontario. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they are still relevant today. Okay, so my name is Cassandra Hove, and I am a trauma-informed registered holistic nutritionist and neurolinguistic programming coach.
Can you share again what NLP is, Cassandra?
Yeah, so neurolinguistic programming is basically, it's the study of how we speak to ourselves and others, and also internalize ourselves and how we internalize others. So it's the relationship between thought, belief systems, and language, and how that forms our emotional state, and how it translates into building a life that we actually want from a place of consciousness. So when I work with somebody on NLP, it's more the initial stages of our work is a deep dive into understanding where drama and trauma and pain and sadness and, you know, dysfunction shows up in their life, what language they have around it, what perceptions they have around why it's happening to them. And then we go in and I teach them about the nervous system, about the brain, how the brain forms itself through childhood, and how our experiences form our beliefs, language, and thought patterns. And then we step in with conscious programming, conscious direction, and just a lot of education on reframes and how to incorporate self-compassion into the whole process of repatterning the brain. So it's quite in-depth, and it's usually, you know, a minimum of 4 weeks of work with somebody. It's longer term work. It's not just like, sometimes nutrition clients will come and work with me for 1 or 2 sessions, but it's a lot more work than that. Does that answer your question okay? Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. So I am a certified gut rehab coach, and you know, this whole process of me becoming a gut brain rehab coach really stemmed from my own traumas, my own experiences, and to be where I am today is actually really shocking, because my experiences growing up really led me for a couple decades to think that I wasn't really capable of adding value in the world, you know, and that's a symptom of complex childhood trauma. So growing up, you know, it was everything from enmeshed family unit to addiction and alcoholism to, you know, my mom left me when I was 12, abandonment, and about 2 decades of drug and alcohol addiction to cope with the pain. So all of the work that I did to heal my own relationship with drugs and alcohol and intimate relationships, family, everything really led me to deeply understand trauma. Going through an outpatient trauma program at Women's College here in Toronto, as well as the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. And I developed a deep compassion and a deep understanding of why people suffer from chronic illness, including addiction and gut-brain dysfunction, mood disorders in that umbrella of brain dysfunction. And it really does root from trauma. And, you know, Morgan, when you were talking, you're like, my parents were great and I had a really good life. And they really taught us to lean into the gut-brain messaging that's coming from within, it made me think, okay, when somebody comes, and it's like a 20-second, intake there. It's not a full intake. But when somebody comes to me and they're like, no, I had a really good childhood, we look at when were these symptoms starting? What was happening around then? Because these things, yes, they can happen from a toxic buildup in the body from environment, food, let's say genetics, maybe genetically something turns on and you start to present with illness. And it really doesn't have anything to do with a dysfunctional home or alcoholic parents or an abusive, relationship. That does happen, but it's rare. It's mostly somebody has gone through something in depth for long periods of time. But both are true. So when I became an RHN and an NLP practitioner, it was for my own benefit. I wanted to heal my gut in nutrition school, and I wanted to heal my brain in NLP training, and that didn't happen. And what I realized is, we can put anybody on medication, whether it be pharma or supplements, to improve their mood and brain health. And we can put people on any fancy, amazing, research-based diet, and they can still relapse and still deal with chronic symptoms and inflammation. Why? And what I've realized is it comes down to the brain. Neuroplasticity has been a topic, for about 40, 50 years. It's become more common knowledge amongst practitioners in the last 10 years. And I'd say in the last year or two, it's really blowing up because people are understanding, when you have a stroke, the earlier you can get them to the hospital, the quicker we can save their nervous system because of neuroplasticity. The brain is plastic. It can repair itself. It will incorporate and encompass different hemispheres, different parts of the brain that will either lend to healing or dis-ease. And the choice is really, it comes from that place of consciousness where you step and you realize, I do actually have the ability to do this with this organ. It's not whether we're capable of doing it because we're worthy or not. Oh, I could never do that. That's not something that I'm capable of doing. That is part of the sickness. That's part of the illness, the brain presentation of limbic system impairment, which we'll get into more. We actually have to step into that place of self-empowerment and know 100% my brain is capable of doing this. And I'm going to be patient, and I'm going to learn what it needs from me in order to nurture it. And I'm going to listen more than I'm going to talk to it. And, really commit to this journey. Being somebody who has a traumatic brain injury because my brain was atrophying during my drug and alcohol and depression and anxious years, the parts of the brain that really facilitated gut-brain function were atrophying. So I was suffering. I could take all the probiotics, eat all the gluten-free, dairy-free food, do all the meditation, but it wasn't healing the brain injury based on strategy. That's the difference. Meditation and breathing is amazing, but it doesn't actually yield as quick a result as a neuroplasticity-based program. So that's what we're going to talk about today as well. And yeah, so my certifications and trainings, just like I said, I've done quite a bit in terms of coaching and understanding my clients, years of personal training and having people come in and say, I want to change my body. I want to be lean and get healthy. And there was a lot of disordered eating patterns and body dysmorphia and trauma wrapped up in those wants and those goals. So I spent a lot of time understanding people's mindsets, their pain, their history, and understanding how they respond to coaching. How can we get people to adhere to these practices, not from a place of self-shame or like I have to do this, but from a place of wanting to build a really beautiful, sound relationship with their bodies and themselves. So that's where I've been focusing my work on the last, it's been 10 years now, and here we are today. So, okay, so we're going to jump right into to a practice. So if you like, you can turn your cameras off if you guys can see each other. I don't know what your visual is. You can turn your mics off if you like. If you have a history of trauma and you feel like going deep right now, going within, might feel uncomfortable or not available to you, by all means, please mute your microphone, and I will just come back online and give you a thumbs up when we're done and let you know you can come back to the room. Okay, so the intention of this practice is to connect with the energy, but not immerse yourself into the memory, okay? If you have a, oh yeah, I already said that. Okay, so we're gonna begin with putting, if you're lying down, that's totally fine. If you're sitting up, you can just feel the floor beneath your feet, feel your skin touching either your slippers or your socks. Notice whether there's warmth beneath your feet or if you're a little chilly. Just feel your bum sitting wherever you're sitting. Feel the connection on the couch or the bed or the chair. I want you to just check in with your spine and notice if there's any curving or if you're nice and tall. And I want you to take a nice deep belly breath. And as you breathe in, you're going to lengthen that spine upward toward the ceiling while keeping your feet nice and rooted on the ground. Just take stock of the energy that you have in your body right now. At the end of the day, it might be anxious or agitated, maybe a bit tired, possibly excited for today's lecture. Just take stock with no judgment. Now I want you to think of a situation that you're unhappy with in your life right now. It could be anything, a situation with a friend, family, coworker, politics. No need to go into the situation. I just want you to notice the energy of it. So in this moment, how do you feel in your body, the charge in your blood? How do you feel when you're connecting with this situation? I want you to reflect on how often do you think of this problem? Is it the first thing you think of when you wake up? Are you playing out lists in your mind about this problem as you're getting ready for your day? Does it affect your ability to eat or sleep or be social? How often are you checking in on this problem? You can think of it as a pie chart. And if in a 24-hour day, you could slice out how much you think this comes up for you, give that a color or a percentage. Now I want you to think about how often are you talking about this problem and sharing about this problem with your network, with your closest, your therapist even. And remember, there's no judgment. There's no right or wrong. We're just taking stock. So I want you to think, do you feel like it's going to get better? Honestly. No right or wrong answer, whatever feels true for you. And do you think like these things, these situations, this problem, do you feel like it's always going to happen to you? Are you frustrated with encountering this problem again and again? Okay. Now I want you to thank your body, genuinely thank your body and your mind for being game for this practice. You're going to place one hand on your heart. Just notice how that feels. Do you feel better? Do you feel warmth? Can you feel your heart beating? Do you feel comforted in this moment? And if it feels available to you, you can smile. Smile, connecting with the energy of your heart, the gratitude for your body and mind for being game for this practice. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes and come back to the room. So using your journal, your notepad, I'd like you to rate on a scale of 1 to 5 how intense that was for you. How intense was that emotion? Where did you notice you felt that emotion or that problem in your body? And just label it, give it a charge between 1 and 5. Okay, we're going to pin that for a moment. How was that for you guys?
That was great.
Good. Were you
guided? I don't know if I would say guided meditation. What I traditionally do is a guided meditation, and which I appreciate. So,
oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. And were you able to connect with the probes, like the questions that I was asking?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Great. Anybody else? No pressure. You don't have to share if you don't want to.
Yeah, I found it helpful. I followed along.
Okay. Okay. So you were you were in it. You could feel it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, you can.
Okay. Beautiful. This is going to make sense in a bit, promise. And Morgan?
Yes, no, I certainly could. I'm, as you were saying it, it was like a body scan for me too, almost, and finding certain points that were like very tight, or even when you said something and like a memory came up, or just what's currently going on, like I could feel tension in some ways. Not in a negative way, not tension like bad um, but just tension like as far as like what the roots of what it is. So yeah.
Great.
So that was,
okay.
yeah.
Good, good. And you guys are all feeling okay right now?
Yes.
Okay. Beautiful. All right. So we're going to pin that, like I said. Let's jump into the psychoneuroimmunology. And I know that you guys might know that term already. And if you don't, it sounds really fancy and complicated, and it's really not. It's just the role between, let's break it down. So the psycho is the psychology, the neuro is the neurobiology, and then immunology is our immune system. So when we experience chronic or heightened periods of stress, and that could be something like Casey's brain injury was an impact, right? It was one event. Or that can be going through a pandemic, living in a world where you don't agree with the politics and you feel restricted and bound and powerless. It could be, losing a job or losing a loved one. The definitions of intense stress, aka trauma, are really a hot topic. A lot of people are re-educating around what trauma actually is and what falls under the umbrella term of trauma, and it's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. So when when we go through these situations, whatever they might be, it has an effect on our psychology. It has an effect on our neurobiology and our immune system. They go hand in hand. So if you've ever heard, you know, your thoughts create your beliefs, create your actions, create your, you know, existence, it's true, and that is true. But I like to bring it, we'll get into it more in a second, but it's more actually about what the body is telling us. And a lot of times we disconnect from how our body feels after trauma or heightened periods of stress. And that is a protective mechanism. It's highly intelligent. It serves a really great purpose. But what I do as a coach is I help people to override that built-in response to stress so that we can capitalize using the latest in research on neuroplasticity to pull the body back into a parasympathetic state, into our state of rest and digest, because our nervous system is so dynamic and flexible that when we get stuck, and in that stuck area is where our immune system is really challenged, because the immune system is actually muted. It isn't as important as surviving. So we're going to get into what surviving means and how that has an impact on our body systems. So immune system, digestive system, detoxification, liver function, bile production, pancreatic enzymatic flow. Like when we're talking chronic food intolerances, autoimmune disease, chronic inflammation, foggy brain, you know, all of these are symptoms that the brain is operating in the wrong hemisphere. It's using parts of itself that aren't ideal. We really only want to be tapping into those parts of the brain when we're under like acute threat. And ideally, we go back to a state of rest and digest afterward, but we don't tend to do that, right? We stay in these heightened periods of stress. And the reason this happens, let's take a look at, can you see my mouse right now?
Yep.
Can you see it flopping around? Oh, so the brain has about 3/4, and then this is an over generalization, but about 3/4 of the brain is part of our reptilian brain. It's the oldest part of our nervous system. It's what, you know, when we were reptiles, it's how we formed our nervous system and our responses to threat in the environment. And it's still with us, and it serves a really important function. It's there, it keeps us alive, it's a good thing. But we also have the neocortex. So this mammalian part of the brain, it's the newest, most advanced part of our nervous system, developing over millennia, over evolution. And it's what separates us from animals and all of the rest of, you know, non-humans. So it has rational thinking, right? So when we're thinking about the neocortex, that's when we're creative. That's when we're problem solving. That's when we're with community and, you know, we're hosting a dinner party or out for dinner with friends or out at a party or, you know, an event. And you're in your body and you're feeling good. You're able to make eye contact with people, speak with confidence, your vocal cords feel strong. There's no anxiousness, no social anxiety. You're just living your best life. And the benefit of being in that hemisphere, operating that part of the brain, is that it's also what allows your digestive system to secrete digestive enzymes and bile, to detoxify. It turns, your liver function will be operating properly. There's not a lot of inflammation. So when we think about, you know, inflammation is a really hot topic, and people say, oh, I'm inflamed. Well, there are many different things that can cause inflammation, but it's a natural response of the immune system, and we want inflammation there, but we want it acutely. So when it's happening chronically, we think, okay, yeah, it could be, you know, pharmaceuticals, alcohol, it could be refined foods or high sugar diet, et cetera. And mostly I would say it's from not operating in this neocortex for 95% of the day, which is how we've evolved. We've evolved to operate using that part of the brain for most of the day. And we would only slip into using the limbic, amygdala, when we were under threat, when we had to hunt an animal or protect our tribe. Now it's the opposite, right? So we live in an incredibly fast-paced, very demanding, high-stress life society. So the stats have changed, and this is based on research. So now we're operating 5% of our day in our parasympathetic rest and digest state, you know, the neocortex, where we're learning and problem solving and, you know, being social. And the rest is in that fight or flight, more reptilian state. And the problem with that is you shut down production of hydrochloric acid when you're in that state. So hydrochloric acid is produced in the stomach. It is our first line of defense against any pathogens that are entering our body through food, from hand to mouth, our forks and knives, etc. There's pathogens everywhere, bacteria everywhere. We know this well because of COVID, right? So if the hydrochloric acid isn't plentiful in the stomach, those pathogens actually make their way, they bypass the stomach and make their way into our small intestine. And that's where all of our nutrient absorption is. And they camp out there. It's like they're just on an amazing 5-star all-inclusive buffet kind of situation. They're eating all of our beautiful foods, and their waste products are what creates, they're called biotoxins or endotoxins, and they are what create gas and inflammation. Okay, so this is problematic because when we are in this chronic state of fight or flight, then we are susceptible to infections, and those infections further lend to the inflammation in the body that's there in conjunction with the fight or flight response. When you're in fight or flight, the body's going to raise inflammation. It's going to raise cortisol. It's part of the process. But because we're staying up there, that's where we're starting to see all these chronic health issues of hormone dysregulation, estrogen dominance, PMS, food intolerances, inflammatory bowel disease, and then all of the autoimmune diseases that are quite common now. So you can really see the importance of making sure that we are using the appropriate part of the brain day to day. And this is an art form. This is something that we can actually learn. It's a language, and we can learn how to create verbal, mental, internal, and external boundaries so that we're operating in the neocortex as much as possible. So all of our beautiful bodily functions that cascade when we're in that state can actually function. And this is where our immune system upregulates. This is where we can have power over pharma and over all of the 12-week guaranteed programs, you know, to reverse any of the disease that we're experiencing or health issues, because we're taking our power back. It's about understanding the capabilities of this incredibly high-tech computer system that we live in, and knowing that we can actually reprogram it and we can decide how it operates day to day. So the limbic system is something I work a lot with, and the limbic system is basically the part of the brain that's assessing your environment for threats. That's everything from chemicals in perfumes, in laundry detergents, Glade plugins, to driving in a car, the potential for, you know, if you've ever had any high impact injury, or, it doesn't even matter. Just driving in a car is in itself risky. And the limbic system, these are just a few examples. There are many: food, people, tones of voice, colors. The limbic system is what remembers these things. So when you go through a highly traumatic experience, the important information to know is that we're absorbing 2 million bits of information per second. And that comes from all of the things we see and hear and feel energetically. The brain is actually absorbing all of that. The limbic system is processing that. Our conscious brain, the neocortex, can only process about 175 of those 2 million bits. So our conscious brain is thinking, oh yeah, everything's fine, I'm just driving a car. Oh yeah, everything's fine, I'm just in the room with my boyfriend. Fill in the blank, any example is fine. But the limbic system and the nervous system, that subconscious, there's a term called neuroception. And that's where the nervous system is perceiving. So we have conscious perception, but the nervous system has neuroception. So in those 2 million bits of information, it's gathering all of it, filtering it through the limbic system, and it's spitting out an automatic response that we aren't consciously on board with to protect ourselves, right? The role of the limbic system is to protect us from future threats. So it doesn't have conscious mind on board. It's going to operate based on the evolution of the reptilian brain over millennia. It's a very strong response pattern. It's going to respond based on our past traumas, fears, experiences, and it's going to mark those experiences as dangerous and mount a behavioral response per se. And that behavioral response also comes with the body going back into occupying the reptilian brain and the amygdala, starting that fight or flight response again. And the thing to remember about this is it's not an on or off situation. Think of a speedometer. Think of your RPMs on the car. So if you're braking, that is more of you nurturing the ability to get back into the neocortex using a nerve called the vagus nerve. And we're going to get into that in a second. And the accelerator is you allowing these situations that are coming from the limbic system, the reptilian brain, the fight or flight response, to actually gain control over your car, your body. So when we're talking about repairing gut-brain function, it's about learning when to turn on, when to push the brakes, and when to push the gas. And it's a sympathetic, parasympathetic response. You want to gauge, where am I at right now in this situation? Am I redlining? Okay, time to dip into my toolbox and do all of the things that I know work for me to down-regulate and get back into that parasympathetic rest and digest state. Okay, I'm going to open the floor to questions. If anybody has any comments or questions right now.
This is all so interesting. I'm hoping my pen doesn't run out of ink before.
Oh, no worries. You know, I'm going to send you a recording as well.
Oh, okay. No,
Yeah.
this is, I mean, I'm just blown away by the fact that our constant, even like when I don't think I'm stressed, my body is stressed and I know I'm stressed, like internally. And just realizing how much of our time we spend in this like fight or flight is appalling and kind of scary. And I'm just thinking, like, as I go through my days, like what can I do to help myself like check, you know, and make sure like I'm not in this unnecessary fight or flight, because at the end of the day, it's like there's no, I mean, in this moment, like there is not a life-threatening situation. And so my body does not need to be responding to the world as if it's going to end. And that's hard sometimes.
100%. It's hard. It's like a fast moving train, 300 kilometers an hour, and you're trying to turn it around.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. But the cool thing about the brain, I mean, if you guys, you know, you've done any type of, you know, sports or art training or working out in the gym, and you notice these pathways become stronger and stronger, it becomes more effortless the more that we lean into it. So this is the beginning of, it sounds like this is the beginning of this like self-discovery journey where everybody's manual of operations for their body is different, right? So for me as a coach, my job is to ask the questions to understand, where is the problem for you? What does it look like? How does it sound? How does it show up for you? And then we can take that topic, because the beautiful thing is people have been studying this stuff for so long that there are tools and techniques for any unique situation to incorporate, right? So it is a process, and unfortunately we don't get an ebook on how to like troubleshoot our own nervous system.
Nope.
Yeah, if there was, I would be giving it to all you guys. But I think you know, it's the one thing I notice with my students when I'm teaching my courses is they tend to, there's a period of like mourning and like just being upset upset, like kind of pissed. Like, why didn't anybody tell me this before? Why, what? This is happening all the time. And, so I empathize with that. But I also encourage you guys to also be really excited because it works. It works. Neuroplasticity-based training and, personal development, whatever that looks like, it yields results. So we're going to talk about that as well. Thank you for sharing, Morgan. If anybody else wants to jump in, no pressure. Okay. All right. So how are we doing with not using, not being able to see each other or see me? Are you okay?
We can still see you in our corner.
You can. Good thing I'm not picking my nose. Okay, good. Okay. So the thing that I wanted to touch on in just to kind of touch from our the last lecture is there is an afferent. Have you guys heard of afferent and efferent signaling? Yes. No? Okay. Yeah? Okay. So no. Just to recap, afferent signaling is you have immune cells that are traveling throughout your whole body, head to toe, and it's scanning the environment, your tissues, your organs, for threat, for antigens, for pathogens, infections, cancerous cells, etc. And it's sending that information back to the brain. And then the brain sends an efferent signal based on that information, and it's going to tell the body to respond in XYZ ways. It could be hormonal, it could be a stress response, it could be immune cells going somewhere, all different kinds of information being sent 24/7 through this afferent signaling. Now, we are very cognitive people, like we're very cerebral, we're deep thinkers, we internalize a lot. I think we, as a whole, not in this group, but as a whole on this planet, we tend to think, we are our minds, right? But the beautiful thing to learn about this afferent signaling is that 80% of the information that the brain is processing is actually coming from the body. It's coming from the body, and 20% is coming from the brain itself. So when we're thinking about the role that the body plays in healing the brain, I always like to say undiagnosed infections and untreated infections is one of the biggest reasons that we're seeing things like depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's, any kind of mood disorder. The research is showing that it's actually pathogens that reside in the large intestine and throughout the body. Actually, they travel, they don't stay in the gut, that are sending this afferent signaling to the brain constantly that something's wrong. So not only are we dealing with the infections in the gut, the biotoxins, the inflammation that's coming from them, but we're also consistently sending these signals to the brain to create more inflammation because we are under threat. So it's really, really important when we are beginning any gut-brain rehab program that we are assessing the body for infections. And infections, as we know, because of the whole talk we just went through on stress leading to low hydrochloric acid, leaving us vulnerable to infections, I would say like most of us, if not pretty much all of us, are dealing with undiagnosed and untreated infections. And that's okay. It is what it is. And the beautiful thing is that we have ways to deal with that. There are people who specialize in this, myself included, to assess the gut for infections and clear them. Once we get the pathology to a manageable level, then we can start to really see the brain improve. And I see this with my clients who have huge infections and they're dealing with chronic brain fog, terrible PMS, difficulties in digesting foods, etc. And as we're reducing the pathogenic load, their clarity of thought improves. Their ability to learn and retain information improves. Their ability to stay present in their body and not socially anxious improves. So, that initial gumminess of any gut brain rehab program, it's gummy, right? Because you're dealing with an anti-infection protocol where you're using either antibiotics or antimicrobials to kill off these pathogens. And people don't feel great doing that usually. It's just gummy. But then once we get you through that initial part, it really does start to take speed and start to snowball. And that's personally where I am right now. If I don't know if you guys have been on my website, but I've shared a lot of blogs about my own journey, and the brain fog and the ability to really excel and research and retain information has only been within the last, I would say, year. And that's because I really addressed the pathogens in my gut. So if you have any questions about that, now's a good time, but we will be leaving time at the end as well. Okay. So 4 steps to beginning to repair this gut-brain connection. So first, as I said, we want to identify infections and do some type of anti-infection protocol. There are many, they all, many look different types of practitioners, and a lot of them work. There's not just one way. Then we want to identify root traumas, and we want to uncover, really lean in and understand our reactions to those triggers. And then we want to develop strategy. Okay, so strategy, like I was saying, it needs to be custom. Everybody's body and situations are different. And then it comes into changing the brain via neuroplasticity. Okay, and neuroplasticity, I know it's a kind of like a mysterious term, unless you're well versed in it or researched it already. But basically, it's like I was saying with the NLP training, it's understanding how your thoughts and your belief systems and how we work through problems, how we honor ourselves, how we protect ourselves in different triggering situations, that actually changes the physiology of the brain, the anatomy of the brain. It rewires itself, and it rewires itself in a way to support healing. Okay, so one thing I really like to explore with clients is boundaries, internal and external boundaries. If somebody says something mean to you, or you hear of somebody saying something mean to you, and that feeling of really being hurt, there's 2 things happening there. One is the internal boundary is possibly being crossed, where we're not protecting ourselves from bogus information that we know isn't true, right? So the second thing that's happening is there's a part of us that believes it to be true. And that's what we want to explore. What part of you feels like you are what they're attacking you or insinuating or implying that you are? And how do you feel about that? Is that something you want to own and create language around and a boundary? Or is that something, an external boundary? Or do we just need to go, no, internal boundary strong, doesn't resonate, that's not me, moving on, right? And that is really empowering, because a lot of people are taught, well, that's rude, or it's harsh, or bitchy, or whatever the case might be. But really, all of the beliefs that we have around creating internal and external boundaries, language, whatever the case might be, that is actually activating different parts of our brain. Are we in a disempowered state where we are allowing internal and external boundaries to be crossed, then activating these more reptilian parts of the brain that signal a fight or flight response? Because at the end of the day, we are tribal beings. We've survived up until very recently. We've survived off of other people liking us, loving us, and protecting us, wanting us to be a part of their tribe. So social interactions and how we show up socially and how we perceive ourselves in our tribe, in our society, in our world, that if it's threatened in any way, somebody doesn't like us who we like, right? It can be as simple as that if we haven't developed the internal boundaries yet. That can trigger an inflammatory fight or flight response. And it makes sense, because we are hardwired to actually morph and become what people need to survive. So part of my work is to help people understand codependency and toxic relationships, et cetera, and to understand, hey, you have a choice. I know it feels really primal right now. It feels like you need to be here. And this is just an example, that you need to be here for safety, but this is actually what's happening in your nervous system. And this is why it's there. This is how we've developed. So let's take the shame and judgment out of how we're showing up and implement self-compassion instead, because self-compassion is what nurtures the nervous system back to the neocortex. Okay, so it's complex, it's deep and it's complex, but it's doable and it's empowering, and it changes our brain and it changes our immune system. And then the fourth point is just to learn to listen to your body and understand what the responses mean. So an example of that is when I'm around somebody who I've only realized this recently, but when I'm around somebody who is emotionally unavailable, or I'm going to leave it as emotionally unavailable, I talk really quickly and I say things that I don't even mean. Like I'm like, this isn't even you. Like, you don't show up like this in your friendships and when you're feeling safe. I know now, instead of continuing to allow that pathway to snowball and strengthen, I know now, hey, listen to your body. It's telling you. It's always going to tell us first. Our body knows first. And it's going to tell me, okay, this probably isn't a good person for you to be dating or to explore a friendship with, because your body knows. It's picking up on those 2 million bits of information. I'm only processing 150 roughly, but my body knows this is not a safe situation for me, right? So learning to the somatic side of things and how to listen and honor what comes up physically is a massive tool in healing the gut-brain connection. Yeah, I'll leave it there. So now that, yeah, go for it.
Sorry, is there a slide for what you're talking about, or is it still on the brain one? I just see the brain one, but I just wondered because you were going through a list, kind of, if it's different.
Oh, no, it's no.
Okay, that's good. I just was like, am I missing something?
No, you're not. No.
Okay.
Can you guys see me okay? Because my room's getting really dark.
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay.
It's just dark.
Any other questions? Okay.
No, I was just thinking of what you just said. That's happened to me this summer going on dates. I worked on that, and it's so true. Like, if you meet someone and you don't have I like practice the feeling I actually wanted before meeting someone. And the rule was like with my psychologist was like, if you don't feel that when you start talking to someone, then that person is not for you. And then, because I do the same thing you do, I start acting weird. Anyway, that's a good example.
What? Yeah.
Like, why did I just say that? And why am I talking like weird?
Right? And then it's like the amazing thing is being able to walk away from that afterward and not get wrapped up in a shame spiral and be like, of course it's okay. You know, it's like having compassion for a child who's just learning and kind of fumbling through life. And you're like, oh, you're so sweet. It's okay. You're going to figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
And that's that softness that we want for the nervous system. You know, I think a lot of people think that it's letting ourselves off the hook, or it is, you know, being too passive with ourselves. I'm not saying you guys think that at all, but I think that's a kind of overarching tone around self-compassion. And I think the opposite, you know, I think it's okay to lean in with self-compassion. It's the only way to heal. It's the only way to heal. The body is not going to come heal and respond well to us attacking how we show up when we're awkward or uncomfortable or sick or not our best selves. It's only going to get better when we learn how to practice that self-love and self-compassion. That's just a side note. You just inspired me. I'm not coaching you right now, Casey.
No, I know.
Okay, so are we good to move on, guys, or did you have any other questions?
No, thank you, Casey, for saying that though, because that is something I am going to ask myself and try to do now before I see certain people. Like, will they give me this feeling of happiness and joy, or am I just like white toast right now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting once you do it, because then I noticed too the compassion part around the people, like say kind of exes or people who were lingering in my life, because I didn't have the nerve to be like, oh, that's not good. And then as soon as I felt like that and bumped into them, and I like was able to just be like, oh no, like we shouldn't meet up again. Like, thanks though. Like, it just felt so
Right.
empowering. Like, this is not
That's so great.
yeah, and like compassionate for like the time that you've spent with them and not able to do that, but
Right.
it's interesting feeling.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we're on the same page about the physiology of the gut brain connection or dysfunction, are you guys up for practicing another technique?
Yeah.
This one is used to help to reroute neural pathways in the brain and actually heal that gut brain dysfunction. Okay. So this is our second practice, and I just called it downloading a new software, right? This beautiful motherboard that we have inside of us that's so dynamic and so programmable. That's what I'd like to tap in right into right now. So we're going to go back into that meditation pose, whatever feels comfortable for you. Sitting up, lying down, legs crossed, whatever you like. And as you close your eyes, I just want you to take a nice deep belly breath. And as you breathe in, that inhale is lengthening your spine. Right up, up, up toward the ceiling. Spine feels light and tall. While you feel rooted and grounded in the seat beneath you. Feeling your feet on the ground. Noticing the energy of your body. So we're going to go back into that situation that you were unhappy with earlier. And this time, you're going to bring your attention to the information that you learned about the reptilian brain, knowing that it's there to protect you from future harm, right? So we're connecting with the situation that we're unhappy with. We're acknowledging this kind of thought bubble that the reptilian brain is in there somewhere doing its job to protect us. I want you to acknowledge that reptilian brain, acknowledge the limbic system being there. I want you to thank it for doing such a great job at protecting you. I want you to let the limbic system know that it's okay. Everything's okay, and that you've got it from here on out. Your conscious mind, with intention and strategy, can step in and take over in this situation. So the limbic system can relax, can go to sleep, take a nap. And now I want you to bring your attention to the future. Okay, you're already there. You're in your body. And you're visualizing that same problem. But you're visualizing it as if it's no longer there. And you're actually experiencing life without it. I want you to consider, look around and think, who are you with? Whoever they are, it's amazing. The energy is great. You're feeling connected. Maybe you notice a smell. It's a beautiful smell. something that you absolutely love. Maybe you're eating food or tasting a beautiful drink or tea. What do you taste? Try and actually taste that. Try and actually smell that. And try to connect with the vibration or the emotional energy that you bring in that moment by being with these people that you absolutely love. How does it feel to be there right now? What emotions do you feel? There's no right or wrong answer. We're definitely inviting emotions and smells and tastes that we love, that feel good, that bring us joy. Where do you feel that joy? Even if it's just a tiny spark. Or maybe it's a really calm wash of energy over you. Might be subtle, but it feels really good. Where do you feel that? Now, connected to that spark or that wave of beautiful emotion, can you give it permission to grow? And in that growth, visualizing an expansion from that little spark or that wave of energy. And just visualize that emotion, that good feeling expanding through your body outwards to reach all your limbs, all your fingers, the hairs on your leg, the toenails on your toes, the roots of your hair on your head, reaching into the brain, expanding into all of your tissues, your heart, your digestive system, your lungs and your immune system. Gifting your body with the knowing that everything is okay. Are you accepting that gift? Is your body allowing it to penetrate and grow? If so, simmer there. Hang out there as long as you like. And if not, have compassion for that part of yourself that doesn't yet feel safe to go there. And remind that part of yourself that you know it's there. You're conscious of it. And that you're committed to understanding why it might not feel comfortable yet. A relationship that you're building with that part of yourself that might not be seen by anybody. And if that relationship were to grow in connectivity, in intensity, what might that feel like? I connect it with what it might feel like for a baby to curl up on the breast of its mother, or to laugh with your absolute best friend and feel so safe and so seen. But the beauty is that relationship is going to always be available to you, no matter what. 24/7, you are there for you. You know yourself, you're listening to yourself, you understand your needs, you're protecting yourself, you're stimulating yourself in ways that need to be stimulated. You have a beautiful, rich, healthy relationship with that part of yourself that might not feel super safe right now. That's okay. I want you to take a nice deep breath and just pin that feeling. Bookmark it. Notice how it feels to be disconnected. Congratulate yourself. Celebrate your willingness to engage in a neuroplasticity-based meditation and your ability to let your limbic system take a few minutes off. When you feel ready, you come back into your body, open your eyes. Okay. Anybody care to share how that was for you?
I don't know at what point it was in the beginning, but I got like a very big burst of emotion in envisioning what I want the future to look like. When you said that, it was almost like a huge relief, like a weight was off of my shoulders. And that I could like feel it and see it. And I mean, like I felt tears on my cheek and I'm like, why am I crying? Like, I'm so happy. And it's just, it was, yeah, that was interesting to put it into that perspective. And so I was just focused on like right now and like, how do I fix this now and make myself better now? That it's kind of hard sometimes to see like a world where this almost doesn't exist. My gut controlling my everyday thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is in my research and in my wisdom and my experience. That is the key to healing the gut, and that's the key to healing the brain. And you know, a lot of people think, you know, we have to have a hyper restrictive diet and follow this and take all of these supplements. And yes, that is sometimes necessary. It's often necessary, but the power that we give our innate ability to heal when we step into the future and embody what it's going to feel like, what we're going to be doing, who we're with, what it smells like, that is going to, it's like adding gasoline to a fire of healing, because the brain responds, neural synapses, so neural connections, they strengthen and grow based on emotion. So when we're trying to reroute the brain into a hemisphere that's going to support healing, the more emotion we can attach to the feeling of being there already, the more it believes that everything's okay. And it stops responding in that reptilian response to our thoughts. When we're constantly focusing on the pain, the problem, the dysfunction, the root cause, all of that stuff, I think it's okay to do all of those as an assessment, like a baseline assessment, but we don't want to live there. We really want to live more. And this is like gym for the brain, because every time you notice that you're slipping back into one of those thoughts or emotions of focusing on the problem, every time we do that, we are, I just lost my train of thought. Shit. It's just like gone. Every time we focus on the problem, yeah, we're taking away from, we're actually activating those parts of the brain. So we want to do the heavy lifting, do the really intense workout for the brain of stopping that 300-kilometer-an-hour train moving in that direction, and literally even just interrupting the thought pattern is neuroplasticity. Even if you don't go into a script like this or practice like this every time, you're strengthening the pathway that promotes inflammation and disease, right? So neuroplasticity is stopping that process, that thought process, and then bringing it into, like forcing it, pulling it, inviting it, whatever word you want to use, into feeling emotion and convincing it that everything is okay. You guys got it?
No, that absolutely resonates.
Awesome. Anybody else care to share? Okay. No worries. Okay. Is everybody, how are you feeling right now? Do you want to get up and do a little bit of movement, a little stretch, take a 1-2 minute break? Or do you want to keep going?
Whatever you need, I'm good.
You're good? Everybody's good? You want to keep going? Okay. All right. So now the window of resiliency. Has anybody heard that term before?
No.
Okay. So if you can imagine, a scale, like visualize a scale of 1 to 10. 1 to 4 is where you're in a dorsal vagal state. So you're more collapsed, ready for bed, maybe depressed, disassociated, detached, okay? The 4 to about 7 is your window of resiliency. This is where you're in your neocortex, the executive function, the parasympathetic state, all of the parts of the nervous system that we want to be nurturing is in that 4 to 7 window, right? And that's where we're social, we're detoxifying, we're digesting, our immune system's functioning well, everything is groovy. And then the 8 to, or the 7 to 10, that is where we are in a mobilized state, is the term for the branch of the nervous system that is in fight or flight. Okay, so that's where we're agitated, anxious, irritable, we're not feeling good, maybe we feel sick, etc. Our external stimulation might be too much. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, there's too many people in the house or too many people talking to you and you're overwhelmed, you're outside of your window of resiliency, okay? So anytime that we are outside of that window of resiliency, we want to bring our awareness into what do we need to do to get us back into that 4 to 7 range. And then part of the body that is controlling that is something called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is the longest running nerve in the body. It starts in the back of the brain and it runs down through our throat. It innervates through our face, so it controls our facial expressions. Vocal cords down into our heart, so it's controlling our heartbeat, our lungs, our breathing, our diaphragm, and also our gut function. So this is the nerve that is taking all that beautiful afferent information, the 80% from the body, infections, inflammation, heavy metals, whatever the case might be, and it's sending that to the brain. And then the brain is sending that 20%, the signal back through the vagus nerve to the body to respond. So ways that we can tell whether our vagus nerve is functioning well or not one really cool way is a gag reflex. So if you do not have a gag reflex, if you were to press a popsicle stick on the back of your tongue, or you're brushing your teeth and the toothbrush goes too far back, and if you do not have a gag reflex, that's a sign that the vagus nerve is weak. The tone has room for improvement. And that tone develops through doing the heavy lifting that I was talking about, making sure that we're in that window of resiliency, making sure that we're with people that feel safe, that we trust, making sure that we are being social. And it's really hard right now during COVID with all of these lockdowns and restrictions. There's a crazy election happening in the US. Like, there's a lot that is going to pull us out of that window of resiliency right now. So our job to create this situation, this picture of health and healing, is to fight for that window of resiliency and strengthen the vagus nerve. Okay, there's lots of really cool techniques and ways that you can hack strengthening the vagus nerve. I teach many of them in my Control Alt Delete program, but you can look them up and find things on YouTube. Simple things like ending your shower with cold water, or splashing cold water on your face, ice packs on your neck and the side of your face if you can handle that, gargling water when you're brushing your teeth for a couple minutes, things like chanting and humming an Om meditation. What that does is it actually stimulates the vagus nerve in the back of the throat. So there's a lot of different ways that you can strengthen this nerve that will really strengthen your ability to digest food, to detoxify, for your immune system to function well, and for you to stay in that window of tolerance, right? Any questions about the vagus nerve?
What does it mean if you have a very strong gag reflex then? You're on the opposite side of that.
Yeah, it might not be related to the vagus nerve. It could be related to, many different things, anatomy, even, stored, that even could be a trauma response in itself. I don't want to say that it is, but if it's a hyper reactivity, that could be the nervous system is just kind of already on the edge, and one thing can kind of take it over the edge. But yeah, I've never heard of a hyper response, mostly hypo. That'd be worth looking into though, for sure. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So let's practice something to help with toning the vagus nerve when we're feeling uneasy. This is going to be our third and last practice. And the woman who taught me this practice is Italian. She's this gorgeous Italian, inside gorgeous, just a beautiful woman. And she's a psychologist. And she said, we're going to do la brachio della farfalla. And I just love the way she said that. That made my vagus nerve feel really good. But basically in English, it just means the butterfly hug. And this was taught to me when I was in a trauma-informed course, a trauma education course at Women's College Hospital. And I was in a room of 10 other women who had gone through a variety of traumatizing experiences, and we all gathered to do this practice. And the feedback, the response was really beautiful. It's quite immediate. So I love to recommend people doing this practice whenever they're feeling anxious, disconnected, whenever they're feeling uneasy or outside of that window of tolerance. Okay, so we're going to begin again with in that meditation position. Okay, nice and relaxed. You're going to cross your arms across your chest. Okay, nice and comfortable. I like to rock back and forward just a little bit, but you don't need to. And we're going to start with really light taps, alternating in a pattern, just letting those fingers stay nice and light. Now I'm going personally at a fairly slow pace. This is what feels natural to me, it feels good. But you can go quicker. Sometimes people might want more of a rhythmic, quicker, pop, 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 slow. Whatever pace feels good for you, that's your pace. And keep your eyes closed and just focus on your belly breathing. Check in with your body and see if it needs you to adjust your arms or your hands, if it wants a little bit of a tighter hug. Maybe it feels better with more pressure when you're tapping your fingers to arms. Maybe you want to bring your fingers a little lower. Just taking stock of how this feels. How does it make your heart feel, your breathing, your overall energetic frequency? Just taking stock, no judgment. Okay. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. So, how was that practice? Did you notice anything in particular?
Yeah, that was good. I haven't done that before. I think I've seen you do it, but
Yeah? What did you
yeah, like I
feel?
find it calming. I kind of get the same calming feeling as if I was to do like I don't know, like like a visualization or whatever. Um, just like my like neck calms down, and like I'm pretty tired right now, so I can tell I'm a bit like hyper, or like I don't know,
Hypo.
not agitate, hyper, like yeah, I'm just like, so that like calm me down. Like I've been on a
Okay.
screen a lot. I've been on a screen like a lot today, so
Got it.
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, nice.
Amazing. So the purpose of that to be used in a trauma state or when you're triggered is to change the afferent information that's coming to the brain, right? When we know 80% is coming from the physical body, when we're in a state of discomfort or anxiety or overwhelm, whatever the case might be, and we change that signaling to the nervous system. This is so primal, right? When we're babies, we want to be rocked. We want to be soothed. We want to be embraced, right? And to offer that to ourselves and know it's available anytime, just one tool that we can use to change that gut-brain communication, right?
Yeah, it's nice.
Okay. So reaction as a choice. This is interesting because for many, many years, I just reacted and I would be, raging, yelling and accusing and just, I was a pretty feisty 20-something-year-old. And now, the reaction, I realized that the reaction, it does more to us than it does to the external environment. So my choice is always to be as soft, as self-compassionate, as loving toward myself. Okay, so even if I'm angry, it's okay. You're allowed to be angry. This is yes. I'm pushing on the sympathetic pedal. I am upping the RPM. I am possibly outside of my window of tolerance, but I'm also human, and that's going to happen. It's not about being perfect or never experiencing those experiences. It's about knowing, okay, I'm going to honor this. This is an emotion. I'm not going to act on it. I'm not going to fuel it. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to let it pass. And I'm not going to judge myself for having that anger because that's how I felt in that moment. right? That self-compassion piece. So in a trauma state, every response is an action in survival instead of a cognitive choice. That was a quote from one of my mentors that I absolutely loved, Hiroko, the lady who taught me the butterfly hug. And it really stuck with me because I was like, you know, a lot of times people think that they are, they identify with the reaction. Oh, I'm bad. Oh, I'm an angry person, or oh, I'm passive aggressive, or whatever the case might be the opposite. Oh, I'm not vocal enough, or whatever the case might be. Our reactions are there to protect us. It is part of the reptilian brain's response to stress stimuli. So once we can realize that and know, okay, well, I developed these reactions based on how my parents reacted to each other and me, how my family, I grew up seeing my society respond this way. Of course, I'm going to respond that way. But with conscious awareness, I can step in and choose a response that's more in line with my values and my personality. And that's going to have a better effect on the body. So high stress and trauma leads to a survival mode response in the body. Healing does not come from a 12-week long program, like I was saying, or eating a specific diet. It really doesn't. These courses that guarantee that you're gonna get. I don't even like the weight loss example because it's so outside of my realm now. But get this in 12 weeks, and it's like, no, this is a lifestyle. This is a reprogramming. This is a relationship building with our nervous system, with ourselves and our traumas, our dark side and our light side. It's just acceptance and working with it. So I'm just reading some of the notes that I made, but it comes from a leaning into what hurts us versus and being curious versus judgmental. So we're leaning into the pain. We're feeling that pain, knowing it's causing a sympathetic RPMs to go up, but only momentarily. We want to actually process that emotion. I talk about that in my Control Alt Delete program. The body is designed to actually somatically process, to heal the trauma and the emotion through the physical body. And if we are dissociated and we're not actually feeling that emotion, allowing it to process it, honoring it, those neurochemicals that were developed in the trigger, they're actually stored in our fascial network. And our fascial network is everywhere. It's interconnected. It's the skin under the skin. It holds our muscles in place. It holds our organs in place. And it responds to the nervous system. So it's really, really important that we learn how to build that relationship with our shadow side or our dark side or our anger or whatever. Allow it to process, because that in itself is a cleanse. That in itself is cleansing neurochemicals that, if they don't get removed from the body or processed, they lead to inflammation and limited range of motion. It actually affects our ability to be mobile and pain-free. So making friends with our triggers versus trying to make them go away, infections and diagnoses included. I could talk for days about, I have a fundraising campaign that I do in the March of May called the Stigma Effect, and it's to raise awareness and money for KMH here in Toronto around the stigmas that are associated with different diagnoses. So somebody gets a diagnosis of an STI or a gut infection or a mental illness. There's a lot of stigma surrounding that. And part of the work of healing the body is to make friends with that diagnosis and to start to conceptualize, how can I learn from what it's telling me? When the symptoms appear, what can I learn from this to create more of the choices that will keep me in that window of tolerance, right? So it's very holistic. Healing comes from learning how to reparent ourselves based on the data. So the data shows that the brain rewires itself after intense periods of stress, and reparenting ourselves is actually neuroplasticity-based work that will change the body's ability to perform essential functions with ease. So the reparenting ourselves is in the boundary work, is in the reframing mentally, is in the butterfly hug, right? Is in the self-compassion, because that's all we wanted when we were children, was to be seen and validated and nurtured and told everything is okay. You're okay. yeah, that was a tough time. That was a tough experience, but you're okay. You know, nurture your body and your nervous system. So that is the workshop in a nutshell.